right, these are live pictures out of Washington, D.C., the ellipse, the backdrop of the White House. That's where Vice President Harris will be speaking just moments from now. Our Priscilla Alvarez was saying about 500 yards away from the Oval Office. That'll be the backdrop for her primetime speech to the country tonight, where she will make her case against Donald Trump, speaking from the exact same place where Trump spoke on January 6th before some of his supporters stormed the Capitol. We're going to bring you her speech live. But it does come in the context of new polling, and obviously we don't know what's going to happen, so polling's all we've got right now. This is one of the critical battleground states of Nevada and Arizona. Still really, look at that. 48, 47, 47, 48, dead heat. Harris, though, has been making some gains compared to the last CNN polls in the Sun Belt states. So on those, that's been an improvement for her. Harry Enton is here now. And Harry, what do you see now versus in those prior polls? And does it show a real Sun Belt path open for Harris, separate from what happens in the upper Midwest?
Yeah, and I'll tell you this much. All we have is the polls right now. I guess the polls and each other, Aaron. Look, I think the bottom line is this. The Kamala Harris campaign, I believe, knows that their best path moves through the Great Lakes. We've been talking about it, right? You get Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. That gets her to 270 electoral votes. But let's say that path starts to fall apart a little bit, right? Let's say we take away the Wolverine state, right? And that drops her down to 255. But if she wins in Nevada and wins in Arizona, then she can still get to 272 electoral votes. So winning Arizona and Nevada leaves that for her. But also, let's just say we turn Pennsylvania red and Wisconsin red. Well, then Trump still is short at 263 because he loses in Nevada and Arizona. And then, of course, there's Georgia and North Carolina. If those go blue as well in the Sun Belt, that would get Kamala Harris to over 270 electoral votes. So the bottom line is this, Aaron. Because Nevada and Arizona are competitive, when you can combine that with Georgia and North Carolina, it leaves a completely alternate path so that Kamala Harris isn't just reliant on the Great Lakes state.
Right. She has multiple paths, as you point out, and even more so, when you suddenly look at states like North Carolina possibly being in play. Now, the Hispanic vote. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about that, Harry, and it's impossible to just tell from any kind of polling at this instant what the impact of that is. But obviously, the comedian making a joke about Puerto Rico, calling it a floating island of garbage and insulting Latinos in a very graphic sexual context that I have chosen not to play here. But these polls were taken before the rally. So, can you look in there and see any possible ways in which something like those comedians' comments could impact it?
Yeah, I think so, because the bottom line is this. Donald Trump has been doing quite well among Hispanic voters. Kamala Harris has been underperforming with them, especially in those Southwest states. So this is Donald Trump versus the Democrat among Hispanic voters. I took an average of Arizona and Nevada. Last time around, Joe Biden won Hispanic voters in those states by an average of 24 points. Now Kamala Harris is only up by 10 points amongst them. So the bottom line is Kamala Harris has been doing quite well in Arizona and Nevada, despite doing poorly among Latino voters. If any of those Latino movers were moved by those comments from the rally this past weekend, it can only help Kamala Harris even more. So this is something that Donald Trump really doesn't want to occur, because the bottom line, he's been making inroads with Hispanic voters, and any loss among them could put Arizona and Nevada in a Harris's column.
So Esteb was talking about voters who have just been, praying to God they didn't have to deal with the day of voting. Yeah. And now the day has come, whether they're voting early or next week, and they just are putting it off to see how they feel on that day. He was talking about Jake in Minnesota. How is he going to feel on that day? So there are undecided voters out there. As impossible as that may be for some people who are watching to comprehend, they are out there. What are they looking for, Harry?
Yeah, I can't believe there's still undecided voters out there, but the polling tells us that there are. And what do they need to learn more about? Well, they say, clearly the plurality here, 48% say they need to learn more about Kamala Harris, compared to just 36% who say they need to learn more about Donald Trump. So I think it's up to Harris to win over those undecided voters. They've mostly made up their minds about Donald Trump. The question is, can Harris actually convert them and put them in her column? And I think a speech like tonight could go a long way in doing so.
All right, Harry, thank you very much. And I want to go now to Democratic Congressman Stephen Horsford of Nevada, ahead of Harris's speech, because he's co-chair of her campaign and chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, live from where Harris will be speaking in Washington on that ellipse in just a couple of moments. So, Congressman Horsford, in these final moments before she begins speaking, when you hear Harry talk about the voters of whom 48% say they still need to learn more about Harris, as opposed to 36% who say the same about Trump. Is there anything at this point that you think Harris can say new that would swing those people, or is it just really a matter of, emotion and the quote-unquote feels that they may have on Election Day?
Well, thank you for having me on, Aaron. Look, I know polls are about margin of error, but this election will be won based on a margin of effort. And Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are putting in a full court effort in all of the battlegrounds, including my home state of Nevada. And you can feel it here tonight with the energy and the fact that she's going to talk about a vision for America, how we bring Americans together by building coalitions. She has a to-do list while Donald Trump has an enemies list. Her to-do list includes passing an opportunity economy that will lift up all of Americans, creating economic opportunity to afford to buy a home, to take on corporate gouging, to reduce cost of groceries and childcare, and to protect a woman's fundamental right to make decisions about her body. Those are the messages that I believe we will hear from the Vice President Kamala Harris. The White House is directly behind her.
Yep.
And in 7 days, the American people get to decide who gets to sit behind the resolute desk at the White House.
So Congressman, you know, you hail from Nevada, and that was a Trump a state that, you know, had seemed more solidly in Trump territory. Now a total toss-up according to our latest poll, and Kamala Harris has made progress there. Do you believe she can win Nevada? I mean, do you really believe that she can win it, or that she's got it?
We're going to win Nevada because we have a ground game. We have hundreds of volunteers, thousands in fact, every day on the doors, on the phones, volunteers who are making the effort to make sure that every single vote gets counted, every vote turns out. And Kamala Harris tonight is reaching out to Democrats, to Republicans, to nonpartisans. A third of the electorate in Nevada are nonpartisans, and they will determine the outcome. And I believe Kamala Harris will in fact win Nevada and a number of the key battleground states in 7 days.
So I want to ask you, because you're obviously co-chair for a campaign, but you are also chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, about how Harris has dismissed concerns that black men are not supporting her campaign strongly enough, concerns that, of course, President Barack Obama has voiced. She was on the Breakfast Club radio show earlier this morning, Congressman. Here's what she said about it.
The black men in particular who are at the rallies have recently been saying to me, don't you listen to that, and they got to stop with all that noise. We support you. So I'm glad you raised the topic so we could actually deal with the reality of it versus what some of the media is trying to create as a narrative.
Now, just to be direct and frank here, it's not a media narrative. I mean, Barack Obama's been talking about it. We've seen it in polls. What do you think?
Well, it's not enough to just talk about black men or talk down to black men. It's important to listen to black men. And that's exactly what Vice President Kamala Harris has been doing, not just recently, but really throughout her entire career as Vice President, as United States Senator, as Attorney General. And that is why, after listening to them, she's introduced an agenda that centers the issues that matter to black men. The National Health Equity Initiative to take on sickle cell, diabetes, and prostate cancer, providing forgivable loans for 1 million black entrepreneurs to start and grow a business, to help more black homeowners buy a home, to build equity and wealth. These are the things that black Americans care about, and that's why she's going to win the black male vote, and she's going to win this election in 7 days.
All right, well, Congressman Horsford, I appreciate your time. I know you need to go, and she's obviously about to come out.
It was the historic moment Donald Trump became president of the United States on a day that was filled with extraordinary pomp and pageantry.
God bless America.
He paid tribute to the Obamas.
They have been magnificent. Thank you.
But pointedly said not a word about Hillary Clinton. The seating arrangements mirrored the divisions in the nation. The Trump family were seated together on one side. Bill and Hillary were seated with the Bushes and the Obamas on the other. Keeping a long American tradition, the incoming president arrived at the White House for coffee and tea and was greeted by the Obamas.
Vice President-elect, how are you? Good to see you.
Melania carried a Tiffany's gift box.
So nice to see you. How are you?
President Obama even gently teased President Trump.
So now we'll get used to the protocol.
The moment Melania handed over her gift to Michelle, a question began trending on social media. Hashtag, what's in the Tiffany's box? The inauguration ceremony was a poignant moment for the Clintons. Not long ago, they were certain this was going to be Hillary's inauguration day. Bill Clinton squeezed Hillary's hand for a moment as they walked down the Capitol corridor. As they emerged, there were shouts from supporters.
We're here for you.
President George W. Bush was welcomed with one of the biggest ovations of the day, shaking hands with old friends and strangers alike. President Obama and President Trump arrived at the Capitol together without a hint of tension between them.
Hello, everybody.
First Lady Melania looked stunning as she was escorted through the Capitol corridors by a Marine. When the new president came into view, he gave a thumbs-up sign to the cheering crowd. Within minutes of being sworn in, he was at work, signing the first official documents of his presidency. At the official luncheon, the president and his guests dined on steamed lobster, grilled bison, and apple pie. Trump made a point of seeking out Hillary Clinton and shaking hands with her. He appeared to be thanking her. Remarkable moments in an extraordinary day that will live in history.
They're bringing crime. They're rapists. The big lie, Obamacare. $5 billion we spent on a website. I hire people. They do a website. It costs me $3. Are you running? Are you not running? I am officially running for President of the United States. We need a leader that wrote The Art of the Deal. I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. Free trade can be wonderful if you have smart people, but we have people that are stupid. I like China. I just sold an apartment for $15 million to somebody from China. They have bridges that make the George Washington Bridge look like small potatoes. I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich. I love the Saudis. Many are in this building. Obama, a year ago, Yemen was a great victory. 2 weeks later, the place was blown up. We're dying. We're dying. We need money. Thank you, darling. But Mr. Trump, you're not a nice person. We don't need nice. That's true. But actually, I am. I think I am a nice person. We have losers. We have losers. I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump. We won't be using a man like Secretary Kerry, goes into a bicycle race at 72 years old and falls and breaks his leg. I won't be doing that. The American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before, and we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
CNN now projects that Donald Trump will carry the state of Wisconsin. He will win Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes. He's cracked the so-called blue wall that Hillary Clinton had tried to create. Donald Trump wins Wisconsin. Take a look at this. 92% of the vote is in. He's up by 75,000 votes plus 10 electoral votes. Donald Trump, the winner in Wisconsin. Let's take a look at the Electoral College map right now with that win in Wisconsin. Look at how close he is. Right now, he has 257 electors.
There's a lot of hoopla about age these days.
But not for me.
See that guy in the red shirt? That's Alan Lichtman, 77-year-old Alan Lichtman. And he's racing in the qualifiers for the Senior Olympics. But there's another kind of race Alan's just as qualified for.
Alan Lichtman.
Alan Lichtman.
Professor Alan Lichtman,
who has correctly predicted
almost every presidential election since 1984.
And today, Alan Lichtman's ready to tell us who's going to win in 2024. You see, you may think Alan's just a jock.
Well, I was a steeplechase champion in the 1970s.
His name is Dr. Alan Lichtman.
But he's actually kind of a nerd, a history professor, and a quiz show champion. These days, he's on a different kind of winning streak. To make his presidential predictions, Alan's model ignores the polls and the pundits.
It hinges on 13 keys that I developed in 1981 with my geophysicist friend, Vladimir Kailas-Borak. It's based on 120 years of presidential election outcomes before then.
Told you, he's a nerd. Alan's model was one of the few that called it for Trump in 2016.
Donald Trump is going to win.
And in 2020, Alan got it right again.
Trump will lose the White House.
The race was tight, but the keys were right.
So let's get to how these keys actually work.
They are 13 big picture, true, false questions that tap into the strength and performance of the White House party. And only 2 keys have anything to do with the candidates.
But Alan, 2024 is an unprecedented election year. Can your 13 keys really call it right?
The keys absolutely will work. They are the constant northern star of political prediction.
All right, time to run these keys and find out who will be the next president of the United States, according to Alan.
But first, let me change into something a little more comfortable.
Number 1, the White House party gained House seats between midterm elections.
The Democrats did better than expected in 2022, but they still lost House seats, so the key is false.
Remember, a false key is good for Trump. Number 2, the incumbency key. The sitting president is running for re-election.
Biden withdrew from the race, costing the Democrats this key. It is false.
Wait, you're saying it would have helped the Democrats if Biden stayed in?
If Biden stayed in, they would have salvaged this one key. That's all.
Okay. Moving on for now. Number 3, the White House party avoided a primary contest.
The Democrats finally got smart and united overwhelmingly behind Vice President Harris. So the key is true.
A true key. That moves Harris off the starting block. Number 4, there's no third-party challenger.
RFK Jr. has dropped out of the race, and no other third-party candidate is anywhere close to the 10% polling threshold needed to turn this key. It's true.
4 keys in, and it's neck and neck. Let's keep going. Number 5, the short-term economy is strong.
Look, despite all the loose talk about a so-called vibe session, the economy is not in recession, so this key is true.
Number 6, long-term economic growth during this presidential term has been at least as good as the last 2 terms.
Growth during the Biden term is far ahead of growth during the previous 2 terms, so this key is clearly true.
Number 7, the White House has made major changes to national policy.
Rejoining the Paris Accords on climate change, the CHIPS bill, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction and Climate Change bill. Clearly, the key is true.
Number 8, there is no sustained social unrest during the term.
There have been sporadic protests, but nothing approaching the massive, sustained social unrest needed to turn this key, so it's true.
But schools are just going back to session. With new protests, couldn't this key flip?
Yes, there are a lot of protesters upset with Biden's policies in the Middle East. But now with Harris, not Biden, front and center, that has dampened social unrest.
Number 9, the White House is untainted by scandal.
Oh, my favorite key, the scandal key. And Republicans have been trying for years to pin a scandal on President Biden and come up empty. So the key is true.
But come on, Alan. Biden's horrific debate performance, questions about his age, Hunter Biden? Doesn't any of that count?
No. There has to be at least some bipartisan recognition of actual corruption that implicates the president himself and not a family member. So the key remains true.
So 2 false and 7 true so far. Looking pretty good for the Democrats. We have 4 keys left, all of which would have to be false for Trump to have a path. Number 10, the incumbent party candidate is charismatic.
This is a very high threshold key. You have to be a once-in-a-generational, broadly inspirational candidate. Harris has not met that standard, so this key is false.
Number 11. The challenger is uncharismatic.
Some people think Donald Trump is a god, but he only appeals to a narrow base, so that key is true.
But wait, that means...
The Democrats will hold on to the White House, and Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States.
But wait a sec, Alan. We still have 2 keys left. The foreign policy keys?
You're right. Foreign policy is tricky, and these keys could flip. The Biden administration is deeply invested in the war in Gaza, which is a humanitarian disaster with no end in sight. But even if both foreign policy keys flipped false, that would mean that there were only 5 negative keys, which would not be enough for Donald Trump to regain the White House.
So I guess that means you're standing by your prediction.
Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States. At least that's my prediction for this race. But the outcome is up to you, so get out and vote.
Well, I guess that settles that race. But what about the one we started with?
Well, I won some medals, I didn't get hurt, and I qualified for the 2025 National Senior Olympics. Not bad for a 77-year-old, huh?
If there's one thing Donald Trump has made clear, it's that he doesn't trust election results when he loses.
I just went through a rigged election. They want to try and steal an election. Our elections are bad.
This year's presidential race looks to be the tightest since modern polling began. If Kamala Harris wins, Donald Trump won't give up without a fight. But just how messy could things get?
We won the election in 2020. Who the hell knows what's going to be in 2024?
The nadir for modern American politics came on January 6, 2021.
What are we here for? To stop the steal.
That was when violent supporters of Trump attacked the Capitol, trying to stop Vice President Mike Pence from certifying the election of President Joe Biden. Since then, Donald Trump's machine has been gearing up to fight another loss this year. In Arizona, Republicans have launched a lawsuit to remove 500,000 entries from the state's voter rolls. In Georgia, the State Board of Elections passed a rule that would make counties hand count ballot results, and local officials are now allowed to undertake reasonable inquiry into claims of fraud before they certify. There are similar challenges in every battleground state.
If we don't win this election, there may never be another election in this country. It could happen.
But the real fight starts after Election Day. First, if Trump lost, he would take any election fraud claims up with governors and secretaries of state who certify state election results, just as he did in Georgia after the 2020 election.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
During the 2022 midterms, Trump played kingmaker, trying to get those top state officials onto his side. He endorsed candidates who parroted his claims of election fraud, but many of them lost. Even if a few officials at the county level actually refuse to certify their results, state judges are expected to force them to do so quickly. Trump could then try to take his case before federal judges and perhaps all the way up to the Supreme Court. This could make Democrats nervous. The Supreme Court has a large conservative majority. Trump appointed 3 of the current justices, but almost all judges have been skeptical of Trump's election claims when they've been made previously. If they don't back his case, Trump could try to disrupt the congressional count on January 6, 2025. But here, too, the rules have changed, and not in Trump's favor. The previous rules required 1 House member and 1 senator to force Congress to consider challenges to a state's vote. Now, 87 members of the House and 20 senators would have to agree in order for Congress to adjourn its session and consider a rejection. Even if Trump got those votes, he'd need a majority of both chambers to actually overturn a state's electoral votes, and that is very unlikely to happen. Ultimately, America will see a successful transfer of power, even if, like the previous time, it is not peaceful. Riots exactly like those in 2021 are unlikely. Joe Biden will ensure that the Capitol is well defended in 2025. But to have democracy work well, you need losers' consent and belief that elections are free and fair. The seeds of doubt Trump has sown for years will have political consequences even after he is long gone from power.
Tonight, a special treat. Former California governor and action star Arnold Schwarzenegger sat down with CNN's Dana Bash to talk about how he's combating rising anti-Semitism and hate crimes in America. Dana, I'm envious. What a privilege you just had. I've been in his company before, and he is really interesting.
No question about it, and especially on this topic. He invited me here to Los Angeles, to USC. He has the Schwarzenegger Institute set up there to focus on public policy and broadly about bringing people together. His focus lately has been about combating hate. He called this forum today a terminating hate. I'm sure you get that. And the whole idea was to bring people together, like a former skinhead, which he did, and a rabbi was there to have a conversation across lines among people that don't normally have these conversations. And his personal connection to this was fascinating.
You have worn so many hats in your lifetime: a bodybuilder, a movie star, governor of California. You're using this chapter of your life to speak out against hate, against anti-Semitism in particular. Why?
Well, it's not this particular. It's like anything that I see that really bothers me, I get involved with it. If it is the fight against fossil fuels and to create a clean environment, if it is motivating people to get up and to go and become successful, or if it is prejudice and hatred that I've seen over the years rise. So it became kind of alarming to me, and I said to myself, you know, you don't have to just sit there and watch this whole thing. I think that you can get involved and use your platform to kind of speak out about that and how wrong it is because of my history. I come from a country that was part of the Second World War. Austria, I mean, Hitler himself was part Austrian. And it's all because we let this grow, this anti-Semitism and this hatred during that time. And so I just said to myself, well, I come from a place where this has been done once before. And I don't want that to happen again.
You stood up at this forum and you said,
and I was born with a father that was a Nazi. Think about that.
The air went out of the room. I've heard you talk about your father, but not like that. What made you say it that way?
Well, first of all, you have to understand when I improvise a speech, I don't think about how I say something or what I say.
You used the story of your father to try to reach people who are getting sucked into groups that propagate hate.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about making that connection.
My father was, and so many other millions of men, was sucked into a hate system through lies and deceits. And so we have seen where that leads. As I've seen it firsthand, how broken this man were, the kind of atrocities that happened, how many millions of people had to die, and then they ended up losers. You know, the Confederacy, losers. They say, all of this just doesn't work. I mean, let's just go and get along. And love is more powerful than hate.
But in this video that you did last month,
I want to talk to you today about the rising hate and anti-Semitism we've seen all over the world.
which was incredibly powerful and has been seen how many times now?
Well, apparently, you know,
Millions.
almost 100 million people saw it, and there's billions of impressions, so it's really fantastic.
You drew this parallel between participating in Nazi hate during World War II and hateful ideology that is growing in the U.S. now. Is that the path America is on right now?
I don't know if it's the path that we're on, but I know there's the danger that we go in that direction.
You put out another video after January 6th, 2021, and you compared the storming of the Capitol to Kristallnacht in Germany and in Austria in 1938, when Nazis burned synagogues, Jewish businesses and homes. About 30,000 Jewish men were taken. That was the beginning of it. What did you mean by that? I wanted to ask you that. What did you see on January 6th that reminded you of the beginning of years of hatred and killing in Germany and Austria?
Well, it's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the insurrection, that this is very dangerous. It's a wake-up call to let people know that you have to take this seriously, not just like, oh, let's get those right-wingers, let's put them to jail and all of this stuff. No, this is much more than that. You know, what creates something like that? And sadly, I have to say that no one really has covered it well, the insurrection, because they only said, okay, they were wrong, and they have to go to jail, and we have to punish them and all this stuff. But no one really has gotten into why was it that way? What powers do people have that are really upset and angry at government?
Well, part of it was that they were told that the election in 2020 was stolen.
No, but remember that it's always kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Absolutely.
So it's not, that alone would not drive anyone to Washington. I think there was just such an unbelievable dissatisfaction. There's so much anger.
You said history shouldn't repeat itself. Donald Trump is now the front runner to be the nominee of your party, of the Republican Party. Given everything you said, does that concern you?
Absolutely not, because being a front runner of one party and letting them dig this hole deeper and deeper is going to make it easier for the Democrats in the end to win. It's sad to see that they couldn't come up with a new talent, with a new face that is a reasonable, smart, intelligent person that can lead this country in a Republican way.
You think there's no way he would win again?
No.
What if he did?
What is if it is a hypothetical question? But I can guarantee you that he's going to go maybe get the Republican nomination. Then when it comes down to the actual election, there's too many people now that have seen what he did as president, that I think when it comes to the majority on election day, I think they will see the difference between one or the other. And believe me, I'm not the first one to say, hey, this is really great to have Biden back as president. No, but there's just no better option there, the way it looks right now.
Connecting this back to January 6th, you say the country hasn't really learned from it. How do you, I mean, you're a leader, you were governor of a very big state. How do you reach those people when they are listening still to lies about the 2020 election and a leader who is perpetuating that still?
Well, they will be buying into it because they want to buy in. Even though when they hear the evidence and when they see, like, for instance, Fox with Tucker Carlson and all this being fired by spreading the wrong news, and Fox going to court because they have lied intentionally, not mistakenly, intentionally, over and over again about this. I mean, it's like, you know, people hear that, but it doesn't mean anything because they just want to believe the election was stolen because Trump is their man.
But as that relates to the hate that you're trying to stop and the kind of the temperature that you're trying to help bring down in this country, how do you do that?
Well, it's not just that. Prejudice and hate goes into so many different directions. It's not about, you know, do you believe that Trump's election was stolen or not? It's not, it has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with just in general, all over the world, we have this problem now, that there's this hate and there's this prejudice. And we're talking about men against women, women against men, black against white, white against black, Americans against immigrants, immigrants against Americans. It's just like this, it's just, you know, he's from over there and he's a Muslim and he's a Jew and he's black and he's this. I just think that this, we have to just diffuse that.
It It was the historic moment Donald Trump became president of the United States on a day that was filled with extraordinary pomp and pageantry.
God bless America.
He paid tribute to the Obamas.
They have been magnificent. Thank you.
But pointedly said not a word about Hillary Clinton. The seating arrangements mirrored the divisions in the nation. The Trump family were seated together on one side. Bill and Hillary were seated with the Bushes and the Obamas on the other. Keeping a long American tradition, the incoming president arrived at the White House for coffee and tea and was greeted by the Obamas.
Vice President Wood, how are you? Good to see you. Congratulations.
Melania carried a Tiffany's gift box.
So nice to see you. How are you?
President Obama even gently teased President Trump.
So now we'll get used to the protocol.
The moment Melania handed over her gift to Michelle, a question began trending on social media. Hashtag, what's in the Tiffany's box? The inauguration ceremony was a poignant moment for the Clintons. Not long ago, they were certain this was going to be Hillary's inauguration day. Bill Clinton squeezed Hillary's hand for a moment as they walked down the Capitol corridor. As they emerged, there were shouts from supporters.
We're here for you.
President George W. Bush was welcomed with one of the biggest ovations of the day, shaking hands with old friends and strangers alike. President Obama and President Trump arrived at the Capitol together without a hint of tension between them.
Hello, everybody.
First Lady Melania looked stunning as she was escorted through the Capitol corridors by a Marine. When the new president came into view, he gave a thumbs-up sign to the cheering crowd. Within minutes of being sworn in, he was at work, signing the first official documents of his presidency. At the official luncheon, the president and his guests dined on steamed lobster, grilled bison, and apple pie. Trump made a point of seeking out Hillary Clinton and shaking hands with her. He appeared to be thanking her. Remarkable moments in an extraordinary day that will live in history.
They're bringing crime. They're rapists. The big lie, Obamacare. $5 billion we spent on a website. I hire people. They do a website. It costs me $3. Are you running? Are you not running? I am officially running for President of the United States. We need a leader that wrote The Art of the Deal. I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. Free trade can be wonderful if you have smart people, but we have people that are stupid. I like China. I just sold an apartment for $15 million to somebody from China. They have bridges that make the George Washington Bridge look like small potatoes. I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich. I love the Saudis. Many are in this building. Obama, a year ago, Yemen was a great victory. 2 weeks later, the place was blown up. We're dying. We're dying. We need money. Thank you, darling. But Mr. Trump, you're not a nice person. We don't need nice. That's true. But actually, I am. I think I am a nice person. We have losers. We have losers. I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump. We won't be using a man like Secretary Kerry, goes into a bicycle race at 72 years old and falls and breaks his leg. I won't be doing that. The American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before, and we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
CNN now projects that Donald Trump will carry the state of Wisconsin. He will win Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes. He's cracked the so-called blue wall that Hillary Clinton had tried to create. Donald Trump wins Wisconsin. Take a look at this. 92% of the vote is in. He's up by 75,000 votes plus 10 electoral votes. Donald Trump, the winner in Wisconsin. Let's take a look at the Electoral College map right now. With that win, in Wisconsin. Look at how close he is. Right now, he has 257 electoral votes. He needs 13 more, 270, to be elected president of the United States. Hillary Clinton remains at 215.
For Donald Trump, the first Republican debate was either a great victory.
He is getting
I want to run as the Republican nominee.
Close to it.
And the wall comes tumbling down. This is the blue wall that Hillary Clinton had talked about.
Think
this
they
is
like
a state
me very much.
that Hillary
There's
Clinton
no
hasn't
denying
even
Trump
visited
was the star
since
attraction,
the Democratic
and leave it to the
convention
billionaire to
over the
lead
summer.
it off with a
and
chorus
it's stunning.
of
Look, the
boos.
last time
Who
it
is
was
unwilling
close,
tonight
I
to
believe,
pledge your
was in
support to the
2000.
eventual
But
nominee
since
of the
then,
Republican
Democrats have won the
Party,
state.
and
This is a state that
to not
voted for
run
Mike
an
Dukakis over
independent
George
campaign
H.W. Bush. I mean,
against
this is a
that person.
reliably Democratic state. It is amazing to me, and this is not an original observation, but the idea
I
that
cannot say
the Clinton
I have to
campaign can
respect the
see
person
white
that
working
if
class
it's not
voters
me, the
going
person
to
that
Trump
wins.
in
If
places
I do
like
win and
Iowa
I'm leading by
and
quite
Ohio,
a bit,
and
that's
not
what I want to do. I can
see
totally
that
make
Wisconsin
that pledge.
was
If I'm
also
the
potentially
nominee,
in
I will
jeopardy.
pledge I will
That's
not
remarkable.
run as an independent.
I mean,
Our
this is
Stephen
truly
Fabian
the
was in
beginning of the end
Cleveland
for
for
Hillary
the
Clinton's
big
campaign.
debate.
Donald Trump was center stage, and he took on a lot of topics. But when he was questioned about the war on women, guess whose name came up?
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account?
Only Rosie O'Donnell. The big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
Rosie O'Donnell responded with this tweet. Try explaining that to your kids. Later, Trump was challenged for donating money to the Clinton Foundation.
I give to everybody. When they call, I give. With Hillary Clinton, I said, be at my wedding, and she came to my wedding. You know why? She had no choice because I gave.
It's true. The Clintons did attend Trump's wedding in 2005. After the debate, Trump was confident he had won.
And that I supposedly, according to what everyone's telling me, I won the debate, according to what they've, the call-ins and everything. But the questions to me were not nice. I didn't think they were appropriate.
Reaction is split. A Time magazine online poll declared Trump the runaway winner with 47%. Dr. Ben Carson and Marco Rubio came in tied for second at 11%. And this from the Drudge Report headline, Trump dominates debate. Others thought Trump was, to use one of his favorite words, the loser.
I understand why Donald Trump's upset with the moderators. They put him on the defensive from the very beginning, but I think it's going to hurt him.
The real story is the collapse of Trump in this debate.
Jeb Bush denied a published report that he had called Trump a buffoon, a clown, and a word we can't even say on TV.
None of which is true.
Is it true?
No, it's not true. But I have said that Mr. Trump's language is divisive.
I mean, he's a true gentleman. He really is. The one thing he did say about, and I mean that, the one thing he did say about me, however, was my tone, and I also understand that.
And Chris Christie captured attention when he attacked Rand Paul, claiming his opponent's proposals will make it harder to track down terrorists.
Listen, Senator, when you're sitting in a subcommittee just blowing hot air about this, you can say things like that.
It's over.
That's it.
So watching this early voting is so interesting. We have 50 million ballots that have already been cast ahead of Tuesday's election a week from today. So in the battleground states where we have data. So registered Republicans hold an advantage with the early voters. Now, you don't know if that person absolutely voted Republican, but they're registered Republican voters. So when you add this up in the places where people declare themselves as such, and they don't do that in all the battleground states, early voters in Nevada, Arizona, and North Carolina, Republicans are all ahead in early voting, people who registered as such, while Democrats currently have the edge in Pennsylvania. According to the University of Florida's election lab, those numbers have moved around a bit, but that's the data that they are showing today. I'm so excited because Bill Hammer is with us, co-anchor of America's Newsroom and the
person in charge of the billboard and the guy who knows more about every one of these counties and how they voted last time and what we're watching. So, Bill, you know, with the question of the paths to 270, show us a little bit of what we'll be watching on election night.
Yeah, you got it. I think the easiest way to understand this, Martha, if, you know, here's what we got. Path to 270, she's at 225, Trump's at 219. Let me just make an adjustment because in your last segment, we've got Arizona leaning toward Trump right now, okay? So let's just put that on the board for the moment. The easiest path for Kamala Harris to get to this number runs through the upper Midwest. It's Wisconsin, it's Michigan, it's Pennsylvania, then it's this one electoral vote in Nebraska, that is in Omaha, and that would do it. She'd be the next president, Oval Office, right at 270 electoral votes. So let me go ahead and flip this around a little bit. Republicans feel good about Arizona. They feel good about Nevada. They feel good about North Carolina. Georgia's really interesting. They got a great website. I tell viewers to go there all the time and check it out. So if Trump were to take those states, look where he is, right? He's at 268. Under this scenario, Trump's going to have to steal one of the Great Lakes states, okay? Maybe it's Pennsylvania, okay? That would do it. If it's not Pennsylvania, go ahead and click for me, please. There you go. Maybe it's Michigan, right? That does it as well. If it's not Michigan, could be Wisconsin. So all that's possible, Martha, or none of it's possible. But that's what we're dealing with right now, 7 days out, and you can run a number of scenarios through this map and try and get to the magic number of 270.
Yeah, so that Nebraska is the Omaha area where they break out their electoral vote. It's one electoral vote in that first scenario that you showed. Show me Wisconsin, because we're about to speak to Eric Hovde, who is the Wisconsin Senate candidate there, and they've been closing the gap because we just moved that from lean Dem to toss-up.
Okay, so what we're looking at right now, this is the results from 2020. In the state of, in the state of Wisconsin, you see the margin of 20,000 with Joe Biden over Donald Trump. This is Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump 8 years ago, just shy of 23,000. Well, I think what's fascinating about Wisconsin, you go ahead and you take out Obama's victory in 2008 and Obama's victory in 2012. It is hard for me to find a state that has been so competitive going back to the year 2000. Like in the year 2000, we're all focused on Florida, right? George Bush and Al Gore. Wisconsin was decided by 0.3 percentage points. 4 years later, with John Kerry, it was decided by 0.4 percentage points. And I just showed you this from 2016, 0.8 between Trump and Clinton. And in 2020, 0.6 between Biden and Trump. So it's a great question, something to watch. We'll see about the turnout come 7 days from now.
Bill, thank you so much. Bill Hemmer, thanks for coming by today. Great to see you as always, and we'll be watching.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
I predict a new path-breaking president, our first woman president, and America's first president of mixed African and Asian descent, which kind of foreshadows where the U.S. is going. We're rapidly becoming a majority-minority country. Old white guys like me are on the decline.
In just 10 days' time, we might know who the next US president is as results emerge from across the states. But before we get there, these final days are going to be nail-biting, not just for the candidates or for the American people. It really is on a knife edge, and calling this race seems nearly impossible.
Well, Alan Lichtman is known, I don't know whether it's a compliment or not, as the Nostradamus of American political polling. He certainly has a good record. He has correctly called 9 out of the last 10 presidential elections. That's going all the way back to 1984. And the one the question marks over certainly had a late surprise. Now, he uses a system of which he published under the name Keys to the White House. So let's speak to the distinguished professor of history at the American University, Alan Lichtman. I think I'm right in saying that last month you did make a call and you said that you thought Kamala Harris was going to win. Is that still your position?
Yeah, that is still my position. I issued my prediction deliberately on September 5th before the Harris-Trump debate that all the pundits saying was going to be so pivotal in deciding the election because the big message of my system, the keys to the White House, is that it's governing, not campaigning, that counts. And the keys gauge the strength and performance of the White House party. And I have not changed my prediction of a Kamala Harris win, despite all the vicissitudes of the campaign, which have gone in both directions. Let's not forget, Harris whipped him badly in the debate, and that didn't seem to move anyone or anything. But my prediction still stands, and I have a 40-year track record behind it.
And if you could summarize, why you think it's the case that she's likely to be elected, what is it?
Yes. I have 13 keys that have been right since I predicted Ronald Reagan's reelection in April 1982, nearly 3 years ahead of time, when 60% of Americans said he was too old to run again. It's a purely nonpartisan system. I've predicted the two most conservative presidents of our time, Reagan and Trump, along with liberals like Obama. And the way it works, of my 13 keys, if 6 or more go against the White House party, they're predicted losers. Otherwise, they're predicted winners. And here are the keys that I counted against Harris and the incumbent Democrats. My mandate key, because Democrats lost U.S. House seats in 2022. Incumbency, obviously Biden is not running. The vice president does not count. Foreign military failure. The Middle East is a disaster, a humanitarian catastrophe with no good end in sight. That's 3. And incumbent charisma. These charisma keys, I have 2 of them, are very high threshold keys. We're talking about a once in a generation, inspirational across the board candidate like Franklin Roosevelt, the Democrat, or Ronald Reagan, the Republican, whatever you may think of Harris. She's only been a candidate for a little while. She hasn't risen to a status of an FDR. So that's 4 keys down, 2 keys short of predicting Trump returning to the White House and Harris losing. That's why I predict a new path-breaking president, our first woman president, and America's first president of mixed African and Asian descent, which kind of foreshadows where the U.S. is going. We're rapidly becoming a majority-minority country. Old white guys like me are on the decline.
And that might be said to be really the main motivation for MAGA, that old white guys want to fight back.
That's absolutely right.
Now, this prediction this time round you had quite a lot of heat in your direction, and you got into a bit of a spat with some of the forecasters who, working from polls, are saying actually things look like they're on Trump's side.
Yes, that was the same thing in 2016, where I defied the pollsters and all of the conventional wisdom to predict a Donald Trump win in the election, which did not make me popular in 90% plus Democratic Washington, D.C., where I teach at American University. But I did get a note after the election on the Washington Post article where I predicted Trump's win, and it said, "Congrats, Professor, good call," and in big Sharpie letters, Donald J. Trump. The keys are the alternative to the polls, which are snapshots. They are not predictors. They are abused as predictors. Remember in 2016, depending on the time of day you checked in with him, Nate Silver, the famous compiler of polls, said a 70 to 80% chance Hillary Clinton would win. Then when she loses, he says, "See, I told you, a 20% plus chance she could lose," which means if he can't be wrong, he can never be right either. I go right out on a limb and tell you who I think is going to win or lose. So I can be proven right or wrong for sure.
Have you had any abuse from Donald Trump for coming out against him this time?
No, but I'll have to tell you, I have never experienced, and I've been doing this, as I told you, since 1982. I have never experienced the kind of hate that I have been heaped on this time. I have received the most scurrilous, the most vulgar, the most violent the most threatening kind of hate, absolutely unprecedented in over 40 years. The security of my family has been compromised. I've had to put the police on notice, secure, in a very strong way, our home. And I have to say, I attribute this to the toxic politics of violence and disorder promoted by Donald Trump. Before Donald Trump, sure, I got criticized. I've been criticized for 42 years, but never this kind of hate, violent and threatening criticism, and my family being put in jeopardy.
How worried are you about being wrong?
I'm always worried. I'm 77, and every 4 years I get butterflies in my stomach. My keys retrospectively go all the way back to 1860, when we had no planes, no automobiles, no radio, no television. Women couldn't vote. African Americans are enslaved. So they cover 160 years of enormous changes in our society, our politics, our demography, and our economy. But look, I'm not psychic Gene Dixon with a crystal ball. I'm not Speaker Mike Johnson who thinks the Almighty speaks to him. My system's based on 160 years of historical patterns. So I have a lot of confidence in it. But of course, there could be something so catastrophic to change that pattern. But the problem is, you never know it in advance. You can only recognize it afterwards. That's why in 2008, I didn't listen to the critics who said, oh, can never elect an African-American president. I stuck with my Obama prediction. Or in 2016, when people said, oh, the Access Hollywood tape with Trump bragging about sexually assaulting women, that knocks him out. You got to change your prediction. I don't change my predictions on the fly. If I did, I'd be wrong a lot.
Alan Lichtman, thank you very much indeed. A man worth listening to at any rate. Thank you for joining us.
Polls that came out just now, we're doing very well in Michigan, we're doing very well in Pennsylvania, we're doing great in Arizona, 8 up, 9 up, something like that. And overall, we're doing extremely up. Somebody said 97% chance of winning. You saw that? 97%? And you wouldn't vote for Kamala. No! Kamala. Nobody's going to vote for Kamala.
Trump all the way. Advisors are saying that you will declare victory no matter what and ahead of time. What are your comments?
All I can tell you is she's an inferior candidate. She shouldn't be running. She didn't get one vote.
In the 7 swing states likely to decide the election on Tuesday, the timing of the results vary based on laws in each state and the volume of absentee votes, with the earliest indication of who might win likely coming by the end of Election Day, when results are reported in Georgia and North Carolina. But final tallies could take days or weeks. In a race this close, with polling averages showing Harris and Trump within 2 points of each other nationally, unofficial results could take days to come in, especially if races come down to a small number of votes in the 7 battlegrounds. North Carolina and Georgia are expected to be the first swing states to release results, which could indicate which candidate is likely to win. In a phenomenon known as the red mirage, early vote counts on Election Day are likely to favor Trump as in-person ballots are counted, since Democrats tend to favor absentee voting and the counting of mail-in ballots is often delayed, leading to a so-called blue shift. At the same time, smaller rural Republican-leading precincts are also more likely to report vote totals before larger urban districts. While early voting records have broken records in several states, the share of absentee ballots is expected to decrease this year. The 2016 election was called for Trump much quicker, by 2:29 a.m. the night after the election, after he won Wisconsin's 10 electors. The election was called for President Joe Biden on November 7, 2020, 4 days after the election, when Biden won Pennsylvania, as the state put him over the 270-vote threshold needed to secure victory. For more on this story, check out Sarah Doran's article in the link in the description.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are in a White House showdown, but winning the most votes may not be enough. And it all comes down to this map that's been flooding your newsfeed. Americans don't technically vote for a presidential candidate. They actually select a group of electors whose job it is to vote for the president on their behalf. And where those votes are cast could change everything. Now back to this map. Here we have 50 states. Each state gets its own share of electoral votes. There are 538 votes in total, and whoever reaches 270 is the winner. Now most states are pretty predictable. Blue states like California, New York, and Massachusetts typically vote Democrat, while red states like Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming have gone Republican for decades. These purple states are the ones to watch. These are called swing states, meaning they could go either way. Swing states ultimately decide the election, which is why it'll be breaking news when Pennsylvania and Michigan are called, but you'll barely hear about California or Oklahoma. So why not just have a popular vote? The Electoral College was set up in the late 1700s as a sort of compromise between a popular vote and a Congress vote. Most Americans live in densely populated cities, and the Electoral College ensures rural voices don't get drowned out. It's therefore favoured by Republicans because it gives their support base a bigger say. This means a candidate can become president even if they receive less votes, as we saw in 2016 when Donald Trump won despite Hillary Clinton receiving nearly 3 million more votes. Critics of the Electoral College argue it gives smaller states too much power, rather than reflect the country as a whole. Let's crunch the numbers on this. The state of California has 39 million residents and gets 55 electoral votes. Wyoming has 578,000 residents and gets 3 electoral votes. This means one vote in California represents 710,000 people, while one vote in Wyoming represents 192,000 people. In other words, in that race to 270, a vote in Wyoming is over 3 times more valuable than a vote in California. The Electoral College is also criticised for encouraging apathy. Remember, voting isn't compulsory in the US. Candidates always campaign the most in swing states, which can leave voters in other states feeling obsolete, which is the very thing the Electoral College was set up to avoid. But don't rule out curveballs. In the 2020 election, Georgia went blue for the first time in 30 years, and there's speculation about similar shifts this time around. Whether the Electoral College is democracy at work or an outdated loophole ultimately comes down to who you ask. But regardless, it helps explain why this is set to be one of the closest elections in history.
Let's bring in our political director, Washington Bureau Chief Rick Klein. Rick, the polls all bunched up as we head into the final weekend. Walk through some of the different paths that each candidate has.
Yeah, good morning, George. The 538 battleground polls tell the story right now. The polling averages everywhere, all 7 battlegrounds. No one has a lead of more than 2.5 points, all within any poll's margin of error. So to start with, if you just assume that the polls are accurate, which of course is a huge assumption, this is where things would land at the end of election night. Donald Trump, over 270 electoral votes. He would clinch the presidency for a second time. But no map is a foregone conclusion. So let's play with a scenario here. Let's say that the polls are understating Vice President Harris, or that she has a big ground operation, ekes out just enough votes to win. Here's a scenario that's probably her likeliest path to victory. She picks up 1 electoral vote in Nebraska, and then Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, the Rust Belt, the Blue Wall holds right there. If there's no other surprises, that's 270 electoral votes. But of course, the polls could be off in the other direction, or Trump is able to hold. This is Trump's likeliest path to victory. If he holds the 2 battlegrounds out west in Nevada and Arizona, and the 2 southern battlegrounds, Georgia and North Carolina, he is then just 1 state away from clinching the presidency. Pennsylvania is the biggest prize on the map. That's the best opportunity for him. The single most important battleground state on the map, probably for either candidate, George.
Rick, we have massive early vote, but does it tell us anything?
Well, look, this is what we know so far. 65 million Americans have voted already. That is something. It's 40% of the total turnout from 2020 with still 4 days to go. We don't know who people voted for quite yet, but the Harris campaign's been touting what they call good news for them in the early voting. They're looking at the gender gap. So far, women making up about 55% of the people who have already voted. That gap was actually a little bit larger by a single point 4 years ago, although in 2016, it was a little bit more even. So they like those numbers. The other thing we can tell is the likely partisanship of people who have already voted. So far across the battleground states, a 2-point edge for Democrats. Of course, they like that. But 4 years ago, it was a 9-point edge. A lot of things have changed in terms of voting in the 4 years, so it's hard to read too much into that. But the bottom line, there is no data that definitively says who will win and who will lose this race. The votes that will decide it almost certainly have not yet been cast, George.
Yeah, it is just so hard to read. Okay, Rick Klein, thanks very much.